What if Gojo had destroyed Geto's body after killing him? I know, this is a controversial take, but this would have changed everything. What will happen to Kenjaku without Geto's body? And what will happen to the entire Jujutsu world if there's no Geto, aka Kenjaku? I know you have a lot of questions, but we've got you covered. I formulated some potential theories regarding this topic, and man, you wouldn't want to miss out on these. Without any further ado, let's dive into the first scenario. We all know Jujutsu World's downfall began when Geto went rogue and declared war against humanity. His actions led to an all-out brawl between curse users and Jujutsu sorcerers. During this war, Geto went up against Yuta, who was not even a proper sorcerer, and lost. However, Yuta wasn't the one who killed him. It was Gojo Satoru. Now, this is where the fun begins. After killing him, Gojo couldn't dispose of the dead body of his best friend, and Kenjaku took over his body. What if Gojo had destroyed Geto's body, keeping aside their friendship? This would change everything. Kenjaku would have been waiting all these years to execute his plan, and Geto's body was the perfect vessel. Now that he doesn't have the liberty to take over Geto's body, he'd have to wait some more years before executing his master plan. In the meantime, things will proceed quite smoothly in the Jujutsu world, with Yuji joining the Jujutsu school under Gojo. Without Kenjaku's intervention, there would be no one to guide Mahito, and we might get to see Junpei studying alongside Yuji and the others. There would be no Shibuya incident or culling games, and a lot of sorcerers that died in these arcs would still be alive, including Nanami and Nobara. With things proceeding this smoothly, Yuji will slowly consume Sukuna's fingers under Gojo's supervision, and will eventually consume all 20 fingers without losing control. With intense training, we might also witness Yuji awakening some curse technique of his own. There would still be some tough opponents, since Gojo is still alive, and the curse spirits will keep getting stronger. Despite all this, Yuji will lead a happy life, unlike the original show, where his life is miserable. In the end, he will die surrounded by the people he loves and people who care about him. This is what we all want, right? The first scenario was just too good to be true, right? Considering the type of person Kenjaku is, there's a huge possibility that he had a backup plan if Geto's body gets obliterated. I mean, someone of his caliber wouldn't be waiting for some plot armor to proceed with his plan. That would be dumb. In this scenario, Gojo once again destroys Geto's body, and once again, Kenjaku cannot possess it. However, this time around, Kenjaku has prepared an alternative vessel for himself. But unlike Geto, this sorcerer is not that strong and cannot rival the likes of Gojo, Yuki, and even Yuta. For that reason, Kenjaku has to basically hide from other sorcerers and proceed with his plan. Even though I'm saying he's weak, he's still strong enough to control curse spirits, including Mahito, Jogo, and Hanami, to proceed with his plan. His plan proceeds exactly like the original storyline, with Mahito killing Junpei, Yuji's traumatic experiences, and the Shibuya incident. Just as the incident begins, Gojo proceeds to the underground station and confronts Jogo, Hanami, and Choso. He manages to get rid of Hanami and even subjugates Jogo. Now, this is where the fun begins. In the original storyline, Kenjaku's entire plan was dependent on Geto's body and the fact that Geto and Gojo were best friends. There's a possibility that he might utilize some technique to alter his appearance, and even imitates Geto's voice to trick him, but Gojo will see right through it with his 6 eyes. Despite this, Kenjaku gambles everything on this and appears before Gojo to seal him. Gojo gets shocked for a moment, but his 6 eyes reveal the truth straight away. This made him insanely furious, since Kenjaku was trying to imitate his best friend. In a fit of fury, Gojo absolutely obliterates Kenjaku. The fight carries on for a while, since Kenjaku is not that weak and has some tricks up his sleeve, but Gojo still overpowers him in the end. With this, Kenjaku is dead, and Gojo gets rid of the other curse spirits, including Choso and Mahito. Despite all this, the damage has been done, with Mahito transforming hundreds of humans into cursed spirits. Megumi also confronts Toji, and eventually commits suicide, after knowing that his son is not a Fushiguro, and guess what? Megumi still summons Mahoraga against that blonde nobody. This time around, Gojo has to take care of him. Massive destruction ensues, as Mahoraga keeps adapting to Gojo's curse technique, and even his domain expansion. But Gojo eventually defeats him too. Other than this, all the sorcerers who were supposed to die during this incident are alive, including Nanami, Nobara, and others. Things proceed just as they did in the previous scenario, but without Junpei and some other sorcerers who lost their lives during the Shibuya incident. Yuji Itadori doesn't have to witness the death of Nanami and Nobara in front of his eyes, and he leads a peaceful life ahead. Now let's talk about the third scenario. This one will be slightly longer compared to the previous ones, so sit tight and maybe grab some popcorn. In the previous scenarios, we considered the possibility that in the absence of Geto's body, Kenjaku couldn't find a decent replacement, or the replacement was quite weak. However, we haven't considered the possibility that Kenjaku takes over the body of a strong sorcerer. Things would be quite similar to the previous scenarios, with Gojo destroying Geto's body and everything else. However, we will consider the possibility that Sukuna doesn't get interested in Megumi and eventually kills him during their first encounter. This allows Kenjaku to take over Megumi's body and carry on with his ultimate plan. For Yuji and the other sorcerers, Megumi's body mysteriously disappeared, but for Kenjaku, it was part of his plan. Hiding away, Kenjaku conspires with other cursed spirits, including Jogo, Hanami, and Mahito, to proceed with his plan. Things proceed just like the original timeline, with Jogo's battle against Gojo, Hanami ambushing the Jujutsu High, and ultimately the Shibuya incident. For Yuji and the other sorcerers, Megumi was dead, and his body was nowhere to be found. Kenjaku had not revealed himself to the Jujutsu world. The Shibuya incident takes place exactly like the original timeline, with Mahito and the others wreaking havoc, and a barrier that allows only Gojo Satoru to enter. Gojo proceeds to the underground, where he comes across Jogo, Hanami, and Choso. Their plan is to buy time for Kenjaku, so he can steal Gojo Satoru. At last, it's time for Kenjaku to proceed with his plan. Just as Gojo defeats the other cursed spirits, Megumi appears in front of him, calling him Gojo-sensei. This startles Gojo, as he cannot comprehend what just happened. His entire body was in shock, and at that exact moment, Kenjaku hurls the prison realm towards him, which captures Gojo Satoru. Gojo questions Kenjaku regarding his real identity, as his 6 eyes have shown him the truth. Hearing this, Megumi, aka Kenjaku, lifts up his head, revealing the conspiring brain behind all this. Now that Gojo Satoru is sealed, things proceed just as they did in the original timeline, with Mahito killing Nanami and Nobara in front of Yuji. However, there's no Sukuna vs Mahoraga battle in the timeline. Instead, Toji comes across him with Sukuna absolutely obliterating Toji. There's still massive destruction, as Sukuna is forced to use his domain expansion. Yuji ultimately defeats Mahito, but this is where the actual fun begins. Unlike the original timeline where Kenjaku absorbs Mahito and proceeds with his plan, Megumi appears in front of Yuji. This shocks him, as Sukuna had killed Megumi right in front of his eyes. He rushes toward him to hug him, but Megumi summons his Shikigami dogs to target Yuji. He questions Megumi regarding his actions, as Megumi lifts his head and reveals the brain once again. Yuji cannot believe what Kenjaku had done to his savior. His insane rage drives him crazy, and he ambushes Kenjaku with all his might. In the meantime, other sorcerers also appear there, and the ultimate battle begins. Utilizing his skills, Kenjaku overpowers all of them, with Uraume's help. Suddenly, Yuki also appears at the spot and joins the battle. All of them are careful to not hurt Megumi's body, and Kenjaku takes advantage of this. However, Yuki has no connection to Megumi whatsoever, and instantly overpowers him. Now that a special grade sorcerer has appeared who can literally summon black holes, Kenjaku has no option but to summon Mahoraga. Knowing that Yuji has full control over his body and Gojo is sealed, there's no one who can defeat Mahoraga. Kenjaku keeps himself at bay from Mahoraga as he wreaks havoc over the entire Shibuya. Yuji and the other sorcerers are unable to keep up with Mahoraga's adaptation and speed. In the meantime, Yuki closely observes everything and eventually figures out the wheel. With no other option left, she utilizes her trump card, the black hole, to one-shot Mahoraga, so he cannot regenerate or adapt to her abilities. This shocks Kenjaku, as he wasn't expecting Yuki to take down Mahoraga. Now that Mahoraga is dead, Kenjaku has no option but to run away. But Yuki halts him. He takes down Kenjaku rather easily with Yuki's help. And with this, Kenjaku's story ends, alongside the Shibuya arc.